My father blamed me my whole life for my mother's death at birth. My sister stole my boyfriend and he defended her. But when my grandfather left me his $350K house, he showed up demanding his share and told me something in public I'll never forget. I'm 29 years old. I just got married like 3 months ago to the love of my life, Joshua, and I need to get this story off my chest because basically my father just admitted that he never loved me and that he wishes I had never been born, and that after a whole lifetime of feeling exactly that way but without anyone saying it out loud, I guess I should start from the beginning. I mean, literally from the day I was born, because that was the day that ruined everything. My mom, Anna, died when I was born. Childbirth complications. You know, one of those tragedies that happen and that no one can really control. But my dad, Vincent, never saw it that way. For him, I killed his wife. Period. I know it sounds horrible to say it like that, so direct, but it's the truth. For as long as I can remember, my dad could never look at me without seeing what he lost. My sister Michelle is 4 years older than me, so she did have time with our mom. She has real memories of her, photos where mom is holding her and they're laughing together. I only have one photo where mom is holding me in the hospital, and I'm not even sure she was conscious at that moment because she looks super tired and kind of out of it, like she already knew something was wrong. I basically grew up as the Cinderella of the house, and I'm not exaggerating. Michelle was Daddy's princess, his golden child, the one who could do whatever she wanted. I don't know how to say it, like the uncomfortable piece of furniture that nobody wants but can't throw away either. My dad never hit me or anything that obvious, but the rejection was constant. When Michelle got good grades, Dad would take her out to dinner at her favorite restaurant and buy her something special. When I got good grades, he literally just nodded, and that was it. Once I got first place in my class in math, I was like 12 years old, and I was so excited because I thought I had finally done something that would make him feel proud of me. I showed him the certificate and he just said, "That's fine, Hannah, put it on the refrigerator," and kept watching TV with Michelle. He didn't even look at it properly. The household chores were all mine. Michelle had to study, had to rest, had extracurricular activities. I had to clean the kitchen, do laundry, vacuum, do the grocery shopping when I was old enough. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I minded helping around the house, but it was the imbalance that hurt. Michelle could leave her dirty plate on the table and Dad would tell me, "Hannah, pick that up and wash it." If I left my plate, he would yell at me that I was inconsiderate and that I didn't value everything he did for me. See the difference? It was like that all the time, in every little thing. The worst was at family gatherings. My grandfather, Frederick, my mom's dad, always tried to include me, asked me how school was going, was interested in my things. But Dad would kind of get tense every time Grandpa paid attention to me. Once, when I was like 15 years old, Grandpa was telling me stories about my mom, things she did when she was a kid, and I was fascinated because nobody ever talked to me about her that way. Dad interrupted and said it was late and we had to go, even though it was barely 7 in the evening and we normally stayed until 9 or 10. On the ride home, he didn't speak to me at all. When it came time to go to college, Dad paid all of Michelle's tuition, bought her a car, got her an apartment near campus. It was a super expensive private university, like one of those that costs like $50,000 a year. When it was my turn, he told me he could only pay for state university because money was tight. I knew that was a lie because his business was doing well. He had a construction company that gave him good income. But anyway, I applied for scholarships, got a part-time job at a coffee shop, and I made it work. Honestly, leaving that house was the best thing that could have happened to me. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe, without someone constantly reminding me that I was the reason everything was wrong. In college, I met incredible people, made real friends, and for the first time someone saw me as Hannah, not as the girl who killed her mom. I dated some guys here and there, nothing serious, until in my 3rd year I met Kevin. Kevin was older than me by 2 years, studying engineering, and he seemed super mature and grounded. We started dating and things went well for a while, like a year and a half. He knew my whole family situation. I had told him everything about my dad and Michelle, and he always told me it wasn't my fault, that my dad was messed up in the head for blaming me. Well, turns out that Thanksgiving, when I was like 23 years old, Kevin asked me if he could come with me to the family dinner. I didn't want to go. Honestly, I never wanted to go to those dinners because I always ended up feeling like trash, but my grandpa was, I'm going to be there, and I wanted to see him. So I accepted and told Kevin, yes, he could come. Big mistake. Huge mistake. From the moment we arrived, Michelle couldn't take her eyes off Kevin. And it wasn't just looking, it was openly flirting, touching his arm when she talked to him, laughing super exaggerated at anything he said, leaning forward so he could see her cleavage. I was dying of embarrassment and rage. But every time I looked at my dad, he was smiling like it was the most adorable thing in the world. Kevin told me not to worry, that she was just being friendly, but I knew better. I knew Michelle. I knew that look she got when she wanted something. Dinner was awkward, super tense for me, although nobody else seemed to notice. Michelle sat next to Kevin. I was on the other side. And during the whole dinner, she continued with her show. Dad passed things to her first, asked her about her work. She worked as an administrative assistant at Dad's company, obviously. Told her how beautiful she looked. He didn't even address me. Grandpa tried to make conversation with me, asking about my classes and my job, and I was so grateful for his presence there. After dinner, we were all in the living room having coffee and eating pie. I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, Kevin and Michelle weren't there. I asked where they were, and Dad said Michelle was showing him something in the garage. I went there and found them talking super close, her touching his chest and laughing, him not doing anything to move away. I just stood there like an idiot until they saw me. Michelle just smiled and said, I was showing Kevin the new car Dad gave me. Isn't it beautiful? And I just wanted to disappear. We left shortly after. In the car, Kevin swore to me that Michelle was just showing him the car and that I was being paranoid. I wanted to believe him. I really wanted to. But something in my stomach told me things weren't right. Like 2 weeks went by and Kevin started acting weird, distant, always checking his phone, canceling plans. I knew what that meant but didn't want to accept it. Until one night I checked his phone while he was sleeping. Yes, I know. It's horrible, but I was right to do it. I found messages with Michelle. Messages from Thanksgiving night. Flirting, photos, plans to meet up. And the worst part, messages from after they met, describing to each other what they had done. They had slept together. My sister and my boyfriend had had sex, and from the messages you could tell it hadn't been just once. I sat there in bed, with Kevin's phone in my hand, not even able to cry because I was in total shock. It was like my whole body had shut down. Kevin woke up and saw me with his phone, and the look on his face confirmed everything. He didn't even deny anything, just started with, I can explain. It didn't mean anything. She came on to me and I was drunk the first time. I just told him to leave. To get his stuff and get out of my apartment. Immediately. He tried to touch me and I screamed, Don't touch me. Never touch me again. The next day I called my dad. I needed someone in my family to support me. I needed him to be on my side for once. I told him everything, hoping he would get angry with Michelle, that he would confront her, that he would tell me he was sorry for what had happened. You know what he said? He said, Well, Hannah, these things happen. Kevin obviously felt more attracted to Michelle. You can't blame them for having chemistry. Maybe it's better this way because clearly he wasn't the one for you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him, Dad, she's my sister. She knew Kevin was my boyfriend. How can you defend her? And he just said, I'm not defending anyone. I'm just being realistic. Plus, Michelle says that you left them alone a lot and that you practically pushed them toward each other. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I told him I didn't want to talk to him or Michelle ever again in my life, and I hung up. I blocked Michelle everywhere, blocked Kevin, and tried to move forward with my life. I graduated a few months later, got a decent job in marketing, and tried to rebuild myself. Grandpa Frederick called me often, asked me how I was, invited me to lunch. He never mentioned Dad or Michelle unless I asked first. He told me that Dad had told him his version of what happened, and Grandpa had told him he was being an idiot and that he was losing one daughter to protect the other. Dad had told him that I was too dramatic and that eventually I'd get over it. 2 years went by without me talking to my dad or Michelle. Then Dad had a serious health problem. A heart attack. Not super serious, but bad enough to scare him. Grandpa called to tell me, and although I was still angry, I couldn't let him die without at least trying to have a conversation. I went to the hospital, and when Dad saw me, he started crying. He told me he was sorry. that he had been a bad father, that he had let his pain over losing my mom ruin his relationship with me, that he wanted to fix things. I wanted to believe him. I really did. We talked a lot during his recovery. I even paid part of his medical bills because Michelle, who was supposedly his golden child, had no savings and was living paycheck to paycheck, despite Dad paying her a super high salary at his company. She spent everything on clothes and trips and material things. Team Dad thanked me for helping, told me he had been blind for years, that now he saw things differently. Things improved a little between us. We weren't close, but at least we could have civil conversations. He still saw Michelle, obviously. She still worked for him. But at least he no longer pressured me to have a relationship with her. I had made it super clear to him that Michelle didn't exist for me. Fast forward to like a year ago. I met Joshua at work. He's a graphic designer and we had to collaborate on a project. We connected immediately. He's kind, funny. He really listens to me. And when I told him my whole family story, he didn't run away like I thought he would. He told me that everyone has complicated families and that he loved me, not my family. We fell in love fast. And at 8 months, he proposed to me. I said yes without thinking twice. When I told Dad I was getting married, he seemed happy, or at least that's what it looked like. He asked me about Joshua, about the wedding, about the plans. I told him it was going to be a small wedding, like 60 people, just close family and intimate friends. He asked me if I was going to invite Michelle. I told him no, that Michelle was not welcome at my wedding, and that I hoped he would understand given everything that had happened. He said, "Okay, Hannah, I understand. It's your day." We kept planning the wedding. Joshua and I wanted something simple but nice, in a garden. Nothing super fancy. I asked Grandpa Frederick to walk me down the aisle because he had been more of a father to me than my own dad, and he accepted super excited. I told Dad that he could come as a guest if he wanted, but that Grandpa was going to walk me down. Dad said that was fine, that he understood. But then, like 2 months before the wedding, Dad called me. He told me he had been thinking, and that he really wanted Michelle to be at the wedding, that we were sisters and that families forgive and get over things. I told him no, that Michelle had crossed a line that couldn't be forgiven, and that my wedding wasn't the place to resolve family drama. He insisted. Told me that Michelle was sorry. She had never apologized to me directly, by the way. That she wanted to be there for me on my special day. I repeated that no. Then Dad gave me an ultimatum. He told me, "If Michelle isn't invited, I'm not coming either. Simple as that. Either you invite your sister or don't count on me for anything related to the wedding." I was silent for a moment because I couldn't believe he was doing this. I told him, "Dad, you're choosing Michelle over me again. After everything we've talked about, after you told me you had changed." And he said, "I'm not choosing anyone. I'm just trying to keep the family together. But if you can't make this small sacrifice for everyone's sake, then clearly you don't value family as much as you say." That moment, that was the moment when something broke in me definitively. I told him, "Okay, Dad, don't come," and I hung up. I called Grandpa crying, told him what had happened, and he told me, "That son of mine is an idiot. But don't worry, my girl, I'm going to be there with you, and it's going to be a beautiful day." The wedding was perfect. Perfect without my dad. Perfect without Michelle. Grandpa walked me down the aisle and we were both crying. Joshua looked incredible. My friends were there. Everything was exactly as I had dreamed it. I didn't miss my dad at all. Or at least not in the way I thought I would. If I felt anything, it was relief from not having to worry about him or Michelle ruining my day. At the reception, after the speeches and the first dance, Grandpa stood up and asked for attention. I thought he was going to make a toast, but instead he said he had a special gift for Joshua and me. He handed us an envelope, and when I opened it, there were deeds. Deeds to his vacation house in the mountains, a beautiful house that's probably worth like $500,000 or more. I started crying and told him I couldn't accept something so big, but he hugged me and told me, "You're my favorite granddaughter." Actually, his only granddaughter. But the point was clear. Your mom would have wanted you to have this. And I want you and Joshua to have a place where you can build happy memories. It was the best gift anyone had ever given me. Not just because of the monetary value, but because of what it represented. That someone in my family really loved me and valued me. Well, guess who found out about the gift? Dad and Michelle, obviously. Like 3 days after the wedding, Dad called me super angry. He yelled at me about how it was possible that Grandpa had given me the house, that that house should be for the whole family, that Michelle and he also had a right to use it. I told him that Grandpa could do whatever he wanted with his property, and that he had decided to give it to me. Dad said that I had manipulated Grandpa, that I had alienated him from him and Michelle, that I was selfish, and only thought about myself. Michelle sent me like 20 messages during that time, accusing me of stealing her inheritance, saying that I didn't deserve the house, that Grandpa was senile and that I had taken advantage of him. I responded to her only once, telling her that she had no right to anything from Grandpa because she was the granddaughter on Dad's side, not Mom's, and that technically she wasn't even my full sister. Yes, I know. It was low of me to say that, but I was fed up. Dad insisted that we meet, in person, to discuss the house thing. I didn't want to, but Joshua told me that maybe it would be good to have a final conversation to close that chapter once and for all. I agreed to meet Dad at a cafe. Michelle showed up too, even though I had specifically told Dad that I didn't want her there. The conversation was a total disaster from the beginning. Michelle started demanding that I sell the house and give her half the money, or at least give them access to use the house whenever they wanted. I told her no way, that that house was mine and Joshua's, and that she was never going to set foot there ever. Dad tried to mediate but clearly was on Michelle's side, as always. Then I lost my patience and told them everything I had been holding in for years. I told them that Michelle was a horrible person who had no boundaries or morals, that Dad had been a terrible father to me my whole life, that I had given them opportunities to change and they had wasted them. Michelle started crying, and Dad stood up from the table. And that's when he said it. Dad looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You know what, Hannah? I never loved you. From the day you were born and your mother died, I could never love you. Every time I see you, I see her death. I wish you had never been born and that she was still here. Michelle is the only daughter who matters to me, the only one I truly love. You're just a reminder of what I lost." The cafe went silent. There were people around who had obviously heard. I sat there, unable to move, unable to breathe. Part of me had always known it, but hearing him say it out loud was different. It was final. I got up from the table without saying anything, grabbed my purse, and left. Joshua was waiting for me outside. He hadn't gone in because he thought it would be better if I talked to them alone first, and when he saw my face, he knew something very bad had happened. I told him in the car on the way home, and he just held me while I cried. That was the last time I saw my dad in person. I blocked his number, blocked Michelle on everything, and made it super clear through Grandpa that I didn't want contact ever again. Grandpa told me that he had yelled at Dad, that he had told him he was a monster for saying that to me, and that he didn't want much to do with him after that either. Dad has sent me like 10 letters in these 3 months asking me for forgiveness, saying he didn't mean it, that he was angry, and said horrible things he didn't feel. But I know the truth. He said it because he feels it. And honestly, even though it hurts, I'd rather know the truth than keep living in the illusion that someday he was going to love me like he loves Michelle. Michelle sent me one last message before I blocked her on everything, telling me that all this was my fault, that I had always been dramatic and resentful, that Dad and her were better off without me. I told her, perfect, that they should have each other since that was clearly all they wanted, and I blocked her. Grandpa comes to visit Joshua and me often. We go to his house, well, now our house in the mountains every 2 weeks or so. It's peaceful, beautiful, and for the first time in my life, I feel at peace. I don't have to worry about someone comparing me to Michelle, or about someone blaming me for being alive. Joshua and I are doing well. Better than well, honestly. We're planning to start trying for a baby next year. Sometimes I'm scared to think about being a mother because I didn't have the best example. But Joshua reminds me that I know exactly how not to be with my children, and that's already something important. Do I miss my dad? I don't know. I miss the idea of having a father, I guess. But I don't miss him specifically. You can't miss something you never really had. And Michelle, well, she stopped being my sister the day she decided to sleep with Kevin. There's no going back from that. Grandpa told me last week that Dad asked about me, if I was okay, if I could ever forgive him. I told Grandpa to tell him that I'm doing very well, better than I've ever been, and that there's nothing to forgive because to forgive you have to matter first, and he made it very clear that I never mattered to him. It sounds cruel maybe, but it's the truth. And after almost 30 years of carrying the guilt for something I couldn't control, of trying to earn the love of someone who was never going to give it to me, I'm finally free. I have Joshua. I have Grandpa. I have friends who are more family than Dad and Michelle ever were. And that, honestly, is enough for me.